The other thing that I think is important for us to remember is that there are people within the parliamentary parties of the main parties who, when the whip is not imposed, the party whip is not imposed, when it's a matter of conscience, vote in favour of the pro-life position. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. And while we encourage people strongly to vote for the strongest pro-life candidate in your constituency, we also encourage people to make sure they use the rest of their vote very carefully as well, because transfers matter so much. In the last election, in the local election, you might recall, Wendy, that Melissa Byrne, who is an Aintu representative, hopeful representative, and also has been involved with Students for Life and has been very well known within the pro-life movement, lost out by one vote after a series of recounts in one of the LEAs in Kildare in the local elections. So that showed, that election, the importance of voting pro-life, but also the importance of where you put your number 2 and number 3 and number 4, because the transfers, when it came down to Melissa and the other candidate that was left after the first few counts, the transfers were massively important. So, you know, that's one of the things that we'd be really encouraging people to do, is to use your vote all the way down the ballot.
Yeah, maybe explain that a little bit more, Eilish, how it actually works, because there's often a lot of confusion around this. I know there's people that are listening to us now saying, you know, in my area, there's 1 or 2 candidates that might have a pro-life position or that they want to vote for. So what do I do with the rest of the ticket? How does the transfers work?
Well, first of all, I know there are areas that there won't be any good candidates, or there won't be lots of choice of good candidates. But in most areas, there should be some pro-life candidate that is worthy of the pro-life vote. But the reality is, in politics, that we have to make compromises, and not every area will have a perfect candidate. And in that scenario, we should be voting for the best next choice.
The least worst option, basically. Yeah.
Exactly, the least worst option. Just to explain the proportional representation, how that works for those who aren't familiar with it, or for first-time voters, it basically allows us the way in which we can PRSTV, single proportional representation, single transferable vote. It allows us to vote for the candidates that we most want to see elected, but also it allows us to tactically vote against the candidates that we least want to see elected. Obviously, for us in the pro-life movement, we don't want to see those who campaigned aggressively for abortion, those who are opposed to any positive alternatives for women. We don't want to see them elected, and so we can use the PR system to vote against those candidates. So what we would be encouraging people to do is, and then as the counts go on, as the first candidate gets eliminated, the last candidate in each area gets eliminated, their votes are transferred among the rest of the candidates that are left. So your number 1 vote is very important, but your number 2 vote can be just as important, your number 3 or number 4, even down to your number 5, and sometimes it can go even further, depending on how the count actually transpires in that area. So it's really important that pro-life voters use their number 2, their number 3, their number 4, and their following preferences to ensure that their vote doesn't wither away, say. So if, for example, you have a candidate who's a very strong pro-life activist, you vote number 1 for them, and if you don't, then use your number 2, number 3, and at some stage that candidate is eliminated and you haven't used your number 2, number 3, number 4, your voice, your influence within that election and within your constituency has now withered away. It's now gone. So what we were really strongly encouraging people to do is use that vote, use your number 1 vote. And if your candidate, your preferred pro-life candidate, is eliminated, use your number 2 for the next best option, and your number 3 for the next best option, and keep going down the ballot. And that's why in our very comprehensive grading system, which takes a lot of time and effort to compile, but is very, very well worth it, we have kind of a bright green, strong pro-life, which really represents a person who has been active in the pro-life movement. We have a green, which is pro-life, which means that person has a record of voting pro-life, or has given a commitment if they're a first-time candidate, that they will push and propel forward the pro-life position.